I first came across this process philosophy in 2007. It was during my bachelor thesis at the university, where I came across just a small short sentence that says you should read more about this subject in the field of process philosophy. Process philosophy, what is that? I didn't know at the time what that was, and I had never heard about it before. It wasn't mentioned anywhere during my classes at the university. So I thought to myself, this might be something I could write about in my master degree, when I take my master degree at the university. So a few years later, I think it was about 2010, I still haven't heard anything about this process philosophy. I didn't know what it was. I was just thinking, like, what should I write about at this master degree? Should I write about process philosophy or something else? And I was kind of like, I flipped a coin. It was like I made chance decide what I should read, and it turned out that I had that I don't know if it was fate. I don't know if I believe in fate. I don't know if processually, philosophically, there's something like fate, but anyways, the chance kind of chose process philosophy for me. So I started reading about process philosophy, and it changed my life completely. It had a very profound impact on my life, and that's also what this documentary, you're going to see the full documentary, the long cut. Process philosophy had such an impact on the way I think about life, the way I think about philosophy, the way I think about my changing emotions, my changing state of mind. Everything really there is about the way I view life. Process philosophy had a profound effect upon. So I hope you enjoy this long extended cut. This video is about process philosophy, and in this video I will try to explain what is process philosophy, kind of a quick survey over the basic issues that concerns process philosophy. This is an introduction to what process philosophy is and what it can do. It stems back from the philosopher Heraclitus in ancient Greece, who famously said that you cannot step twice into the same river. You're not the same every time you step into the river. You changed since the last time you stepped into the river. The water in the river never stays the same. It continuously flow with new kinds of water. So this river, this philosophical processual river of Heraclitus, this metaphor shows you that everything in this universe is to be regarded as something that is in process. It is in flux. It is constantly moving and changing, and that's it. The whole universe and everything in it can be viewed as this metaphor of the river. Everything changes, right? That's what process philosophy means, that everything is in a constant state of flux, and it changes from one thing to another, and nothing ever stays the same. Even a small stone will change its appearances over the course of its history. It would change its form because of the erosion of the weather through millennia or millions of years. It would change its form and not stay the same. It's the same thing with the prehistory, like the dinosaur. they're not around anymore. There's something else. Mammals evolve, and here's man. Everything changes and nothing stays the same. Even a word like sex doesn't mean the same thing now as it did in the 1500s. Or the meaning, a concept like what is the good life isn't the same now as it once were. Everything changes and nothing stays the same. And this video is also in process. I'm in the process of making this video. That means camera angles, my clothes, whatever happened in this video will change. It's during the course of its during the course you see it. The philosopher Alfred Whitehead, who wrote Process and Reality, which is based on lectures and seminars he gave at the Harvard University in the 1920s. Alfred Whitehead, he traces this process thought back to ancient Greece and Heraclitus and traces it through history up to his own time. Alfred Whitehead also says that nothing is static and nothing never stays the same. He explains it in this way that the universe and all truths in it is not like a museum that you can go around looking at these mantras, these class mantras, and look in to see, here's truth, this is what it looked like. This is not the way to go about. This is not how the world is according to Alfred Whitehead. You cannot look at things this way. You have to look at it from a processual perspective. Process philosophy is kind of a glasses you take on and look through the world and see how it is, because you cannot see it doesn't make sense to see it in other ways according to process philosophy. You have to look at the world in processual terms and in a processual descriptive terminology, really. That's how it is for Alfred Whitehead. And nothing is static, right? Even an electron changes its characteristics. An electron, according to quantum physics, an electron can behave like a static particle, but it can also have a wave function. And an electron can be here, and an electron can be in the next galaxy at the same time. There's a lot of strange things going on in quantum physics. And I read books from quantum physics that likes process thought and process philosophy, because it gives them an explanation why we have all these weird things happening in quantum physics. I'm in the process of taking a bike ride, bicycling. I'm standing here at a river. One should be like the river, because everything flows and everything returns, right? There's all kinds of different processes, but you can boil it down to there's only one process in the whole world, and that's the universe itself. That's one giant mega process. and all other processes are sub-processes or microprocesses to that one mega process that is the universe. Think of it this way: I'm a macro process of a biological microprocesses. All me is a process of about 200 billion cells that make up the macro process that is me. And that's the same thing with the universe, that we're just microprocesses or sub-processes to that giant mega process. It's the universe. And you can divide it like this along the way. That's all kinds of processes out there, like historical processes, physical processes, societal processes, and of course you have psychological processes and so on. But in the end there's only one giant big process of becoming, and that's why some process philosophers becomes a process theology, where they call that mega process God, and that process God, if you would call it that, is under development, him or herself, itself, and it's kind of like we're all part of this one God, this one process. It becomes a pantheism, you can call it. But not every process philosophers say that that there has to be a God. They don't know what it is, because it's kind of unknown. You can have deductive certainty in this process philosophy, because everything changes, and the truth, whatever the truth might be, it's also on the change, and will add some or subtract some from this truth. So that's the same with God. And even a process God would be not all-knowing, because that God is under development himself. So he wouldn't be all-knowing. He would be in process himself. But I'm about to take a step into this river now. And yes, I may only do that once, because I would be a different person if I do it again. The thing about process philosophy taught me a great deal in my personal life, to view the grand scheme of things in a processual way. It taught me a deeper understanding how to cope with the constant change that's constantly all around you. Inevitably, things will change and do change, so you have to deal with that fact and understand this is the way life is, and you cannot stop the change. But also in personal development, you have to view things in a processual way. Like I wanted to quit smoking around 5 years back. I wanted to quit smoking. I wanted to be in a loving relationship. And I used process thinking to view to getting this goal done in a processual way. To get my goals of getting to being in a loving relationship and quit smoking, I had to view it processually. And it helped. And I got my goal. I'm in a loving relationship for 5 years now, almost 5 years, and I haven't had a cigarette for almost 5 years. But the complicated thing about this whole process philosophy is knowing when to flow with the stream in this Heraclitus river we're all in. When you just have to let change happen and go with the flow. Or know when it's time for you to change yourself, to do something new, to start over, to act in a different way. Because sometimes you can be stuck, and if you want change, it helps changing, instead of just doing what you always do in the same way, just sitting around waiting. Hey, maybe something happened. Like dating. The woman I love would just miraculously fall into my lap. I don't have to do anything. I just have to go with the flow and it happens. No, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you have to do something in this flowing river. You have to be like the river itself, to change your waters, to, so to speak, to do something anew. Like for instance, for me, I started dating online instead of just sitting around or go out to meet women. Nothing happened really. But I started dating online. That's where things started to change, and I viewed it in a processual way. That okay, maybe it doesn't work on the first date, or the second, or the third, but change will happen. I wouldn't stay on the same dates. Something would happen that would change my dating pattern. So I just keep going on dates and started learning from the dates, saying, okay, this way of dating wasn't good. I tried to do something on the next date, maybe be more open to persons. In the beginning I was like, maybe she's nothing for me, we don't have much to talk about, but trying to be more open to this person in front of me, and it helped. And also keep dating, because I was in a short relationship with a woman I thought maybe were the one. She wasn't. It lasted 4 months, but I quickly started dating again after a few months, and within a short period of time I met the one that I'm currently in a loving relationship with for almost 5 years. And she was turned out to be the one, because I continued this process. I'm not quitting the change, but kind of like I become better at dating. Learning by doing, that's also process philosophy. Learning by doing. You become better. Practice make perfect. That's also the thing about process philosophy. No matter what it is.
Process philosophy is, according to process philosophers, the best and most optimal way of describing reality, cosmos, the universe and everything in it. You have to use a processual language, a processual description, a processual terminology to describe how to understand the world and everything in it. Because everything changes, right? And nothing stays the same. But it's also about possibilities. Everything is wholly and radical open, and everything may happen. Everything changes, everything is open, and everything may yet happen. Even the nature of time itself, of course, changes. The future is radically open. Everything can happen in this future. Nobody knew before Obama became president in the United States that nobody knew for certain that it was possible for a black American to become president in the United States. Well, it happened. The next election, it's the same thing. It is possible for a guy like Donald Trump to become the next president of the United States, even after 8 years with Obama. But it's also possible that the first woman in American history will become president, Hillary Clinton. We don't know. Anything can happen, and nobody can. There's no certainty. There's no deductive certainty anywhere. But even the nature of the past can change. We look at the past in different ways, and in that sense, the past changes some of its properties. For instance, slavery and past slavery was viewed upon in a different way in the 17th century than slavery is viewed upon now, because the past can change. So it's all a matter of perspective, because there's a lot of perspectives, there's a lot of viewpoints out there, and it may turn out that a lot of them is right in some sense. And during a process of recognition, during a process of nullification and acknowledging the different viewpoints, you may get smarter on understanding and come closer to a truth. But that truth is always elusive. It's like putting your hand in a piece of clay. You feel something firm, but it can take on different shapes. And that is the process of truth, that there's no real certainty, but there's always understanding. But it's a process of understanding that continues, and but it is the best way of describing what happens in everything. Take dinosaurs, for instance. How a Tyrannosaurus, big Tyrannosaurus Rex, became a chicken eventually. It's a process philosophy that can also help understanding how that is possible. Birds are now considered as a descendant of dinosaurs. Look here at the skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, T-Rex. It actually looks just like a chicken's, especially if I remove the head. Take a look. You see? Now we have the T-Rex without its head. You can see it more that it looks like a bird. Watch, I take off T-Rex's small and ridiculous arms. Look, now you really can see that T-Rex is just like a big bird. Imagine this is his tail. Right? A chicken. A lot of things has happened since last year. It's been quite a process for me, and it's also been a process for you. It's been a process for everybody, the world. We've gone from a Barack Obama to a Donald Trump. So a lot of things can happen during the course of just a tiny year. I'm a process philosopher myself, so I think process philosophy is kind of the best way to explain everything, really, everything in the world, explain how the metaphysics works, everything. It's kind of like a special classes you put on and view the world, and it's the best way to describe the world, really. Of course you can disagree with this, but a lot of scientists, including physicists and quantum physicists, also agree that this is a
great way to understand the real workings of the universe itself. But you can watch that in the first video I did on the subject. In the first video I mentioned Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher who's one of these pre-Socratic philosophers before Socrates, around 500 years BC. And he had the idea of a river. You cannot step twice into the same river because it's not the same water that flows through. That's what he says. You cannot step twice into the same river. That's what he said. And it's actually a genius statement and an ideal view of the world, that everything is like this river. And I shot something this winter. Because, let's look at what happened that winter. This is really fascinating. Even though this landscape here is totally covered with snow and it's freezing cold. It's freezing cold. The river is still running. The water in the river is constantly flowing because of the changing waters. The river never stands still, so it can freeze. So that's is this really what Heraclitus thought of when he had this picture of you cannot step twice into the same river because of the constant flow in water? This is really a great picture of how the world really works and this process philosophy. Because the river, although it's freezing cold and it's winter, and there's even ice on a lake up here, the river, that hasn't frozen. The water still runs through the river. Fascinating. A lot has happened to me myself during the process of a year. I have become a birder, which I go around looking at birds, because there's a lot of species of birds and I enjoy bird watching. That has something to do with process philosophy also, because birds are a good metaphor or picture, a scientific view of this process also, because birds used to be dinosaurs before there was man and mammals like this giraffe. If you don't know, kind of looks a bit like a cow also, but this is actually a teddy bear giraffe, a mammal. But before there were mammals and man like me, there was dinosaurs walking around, and dinosaurs evolved into birds. I got this rooster here, a chicken, and that's like 10,000 species of birds around the world. So dinosaurs are still here, and I always loved dinosaurs. But I have since then become a birder. This whole thing about birding I'm doing makes me think of what is the complete opposite of a process philosophy within philosophy or a religion maybe. There's this extreme version of Christianity, which is creationism that believes kind of the world has been static ever since God created the earth 6,000 years ago, and why the dinosaurs are not around anymore is because Noah didn't put them on the ark. Well, I much prefer a process philosophy that adheres to a evolutionary theory about how everything evolves and changes over time, over eons of time actually. And that's why dinosaurs has become birds. It makes sense, especially for me as a process philosopher, and it also explains why birds are so different from all kinds of animals. And back in the old days, when people studied a form of evolution, they couldn't explain where birds come from. We know that now, and scientists agree that birds come from dinosaurs. It's also back in the ancient Greece, there was an opposite to Heraclitus himself, which was Parmenides, and he actually believed there wasn't any change in the world. There was no change at all. Everything is totally static and change doesn't even occur. That's kind of far out, but many people still believes that nothing really actually changes. It just stayed the same, and that's not possible for me as a process philosopher. And that's why this static world view there's in creationism, that a god just created the world, and 6,000 years after, here we are, and nothing has really changed that much. There hasn't been any evolution of animals. They were just there. And that's the whole thing about process philosophy. Nothing is just there. It has a process to become something, and still becomes something. Birds continue to evolve. Species dies out. Another species take over. Take the common blackbird. The blackbird used to be in a forest like this, a very shy bird. Now you're seen in every city in the world, close to man and not even shy about man, because blackbirds has evolved to something else. They have been through a process of adaptation to man itself. So this is very interesting. So that's also why I think birding is kind of cool for me, because it embodies also a process philosophy for me. But let's see if we can find some interesting dinosaurs. Birds. The thing is also about process philosophy. That's another perspective on it. It sounds, when you talk about it, and also in my first video, it sounds very positive. That it's a process and everything changes, and you can think of Hegel's philosophy in the 18th century. The German philosopher, German idealist. Who's also a process thinker, but everything is can be positive in his video, where you the spirit, which is the totality of man, or the totality of God and the world, it goes towards the absolute rational concept. So in Hegel, everything turns out all right in the end, but he doesn't understand process entirely, I would say, in that world, because we cannot know how everything ends. That's also the thing with the universe. The universe, there's two pervading theories about what happens to the universe in the end. Does it implode and begin again? A continuation in eternity? Or does the universe it's expanding. The scientists can see that the universe is expanding, and there's a theory about imploding again. It will pull towards its thing again and then start over, or it could just keep expanding and expanding, and in the end, every light, every star, every sun in the universe dies out, and there's only darkness, and nothing would ever return. We don't know how this process would end, and that's also a more mundane thing about human history. Are we here in 10 years because of climate change? No, maybe not in 10 years. Are we here in 300 years because of climate changes? Are we here in 10 years because of Donald Trump? We don't know what would happen with him as a president. Is it good or bad? And that's the whole thing about process philosophy. Is it positive or negative? Well, there was people on the RMS Titanic. They were different kind of people, but a lot of them were poor Irishmen from Great Britain, who was going to the United States, to the new country, to have a new life, to go through a process of change. They went on Titanic saying, yes, we're gonna do it, we're gonna travel by boat, big ship, luxurious ship, the biggest ship ever built. We're gonna go to the new country of America, and we're gonna experience process. We're gonna change our life and start anew. We all know what happened to the Titanic, and all those people are under the sea. They're all dead. A lot of them are dead. Although they wanted a process and change, they died out. So is process good or is it bad? Well, that's the thing. It's something we as man value, because not everything is explained from the perspective of man. That's a flaw in philosophy, that we're kind of equal to a divinity that knows everything. No, we doesn't know everything, and we don't understand everything, and maybe what the world process is has nothing to do with a level of consciousness that is equal to man because it's more superior or something, but it's something we value. What happens to the people on Titanic is something we value as good or bad, or the same thing with the universe. Does it start over? We would like to think that that's a positive thought. It returns. The universe keeps imploding and start over. That means that this might be a billion process time that the universe has collapsed and started anew. We don't know. Or it could just die out and eventually there's only darkness. We don't know. It's the same thing with Donald Trump. We don't know what will happen now. And that's the thing about process philosophy. That's an important thing to learn that I didn't have in the first video, that process is what you value it. Process philosophy process could also be called chaos. What is the difference between process and chaos? Well, it's what it's the concept of chaos is what we value. We interpret the word chaos as we want to, and the same process, we interpret it in one way, and we could interpret process in another way. Jean-Paul Sartre, he had the idea that from a God perspective, if you really want to look at things from a deity perspective, when people die, in a tsunami or something, or at the Titanic. From a deity's perspective, it's rearranging molecules and cells in space. Nothing more. But we look at the individual lives of those who died on Titanic or in the tsunami. We look at them as people, and we feel bad, we feel sad to hear that many people died, because we can relate to them, we give them value. And I'm not saying we shouldn't give them value. Value is something men do. We give things value. That's also what Friedrich Nietzsche says. We have to create our own values. We cannot take them for granted. We should know that it's something we decide. But it has no 100% metaphysically perfect thing coming divine down from space saying this is the right way to value things. No, it's whatever you make of it. It's process or it's chaos. It's process, it's chaos. It's process, it's chaos. It's process, it's chaos. What is it? I don't know. But there's hope. Because process philosophy is actually a hope. It's a hopeful philosophy, because whatever happened in the past doesn't say anything what will happen in the future. You cannot look at the past and saying, this used to happen, that means this is going to happen in the future. You don't know. The past doesn't say anything about the future. You can say it does, but it's not true, because everything is processed in the moment. I might have a heart attack right now and collapse. I might, I buy lottery tickets. I might win the lottery this weekend. I don't know. It's a process, really. I just have a closing epilogue to this long extended cut of the documentary that you have seen, and recommend for you some further reading material if you're very interested in this process philosophy, which I hope you are. You can start with Alfred Whitehead's Process and Reality, which is kind of the main work within process philosophy. You can pick that up on Amazon, for instance, at a fairly low price. It's a kind of a thick one to get into and pretty hard stuff. But if you're looking for something more easy to start with, something more easier, you should read Nicholas Rescher, Process Metaphysics. I can really recommend that as an introduction to process philosophy. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this long extended cut, and I hope to see you in my other videos. Bye.